What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? I'm the Godless Engineer, and I critically analyze Apologist claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. Tonight, we're going to be taking a look at not a new Apologist YouTube channel, but it's new to the Godless Engineer channel. We haven't reviewed one of their videos before, but tonight we're going to be going over this video where a guy supposedly refutes the idea that science has destroyed Christianity. And so we're going to take a look at his arguments. We're going to see why he thinks that science can't be used to refute Christian claims or the Bible, which I find a little hilarious that that they think this, but in any case, he thinks that Christianity can only be strengthened by science. So we're going to figure out where exactly he's coming at this from. So if you want to fuck around and find out how science can totally disprove the Christian claims, then please stay tuned. So the Christian apologist that we're going to be reviewing tonight, he is asking why science hasn't disproved Christianity, and he's going to be explaining why science can't disprove Christianity. But more importantly, science supports Christianity or something like that. I don't know. We're going to find out together, I guess.
Hasn't science disproved Christianity? We used to live in the dark ages where we believed in unicorns, fairy godmothers and goblins. But then science came along and it rescued us from superstition and our age of darkness.
So the Enlightenment period did come along and provide us with better tools to investigate our reality with, but it's not like science came along and poof, goblins went away or something like that. Like this belief in goblins. There are people today that believe in fucking fairies and leprechauns and all this other shit. So it's not like science can't disprove the idea of goblins. But what science can do is show how there's no good reason for you to believe in those things because we have yet to prove that they exist. That's science's contribution to those aspects. So unless you have good reasons to believe in some claim, then you probably shouldn't believe the claim. Like anybody could come up and make up a twiggly dicks. Like, oh, there's twiggly dicks running all over this place. Put your twiggly dick up away. Like, I mean, you could say that, but unless you had any evidence that a twiggly dick was real, then there's no reason to believe twiggly dicks exist. The same thing with any of these magical creatures. There's no reason to believe that they do exist until you're given evidence that they do. That's science's contribution to this, the aspect that he's talking about here at first. Also, I think that he's from New Zealand because he sounds exactly like Ray Comfort.
And so if we want to believe in a God, aren't we going back to the dark ages where we also believe in unicorns and leprechauns and fairy godmothers?
No, I mean, I know that I stopped it pretty quick, but I don't think that there are like a lot of atheists. Like this is not like a major atheist argument or anything like that against God or against the evidence for God that, oh, you believe in God, you must be living in the dark ages. Like that's not something that anybody should be putting out there. Like that's just a ridiculous thing. There are plenty of people that still believe in God now. And it's not that the idea is ridiculous. It's just that there's no good evidence to suggest that a God does exist, but still people persist in believe that it does for various reasons. But I don't think that anybody should be like, you're living in the dark ages. Like I don't think that that's helpful in a conversation or in any kind of interaction. So that's just how I feel about it. I'll let him talk a little bit more this time.
Hasn't science disproved Christianity? And science has given us so many good things, from microwave ovens to mobile phones. So you can't have it both ways. If you want to enjoy the microwave oven, you can't also believe in God at the same time.
What he said there was that if you believe in God, then you can't use this modern technology because science provided us with modern technology, and you can't trust modern technology and believe in God at the same time. That's just ignorant. Like, I don't know anybody out there that's making that particular argument like to Christians. So this comes off as a straw man argument to me. And if an atheist were to use that argument against a religious person, I would also call them out for using a straw man argument because, this this is just simply not something that is a serious pushback against religiosity or a belief in God. It's perfectly fine for people to believe in God and use a microwave. Like, those are two different things. I'm sorry, sir, this is a Wendy's kind of situation. So it's just, or I guess technically it would be, well, I'm sorry, sir, this is a Panera, because they love to use microwaves. People that believe in God use microwaves. There's two totally different things that you just don't need to say shit like that. Shit just sounds ignorant. And I honestly don't know anybody that makes that particular argument to any apologists or Christians. And if somebody does, then I think that they're just being a dick.
Well, to answer this, I say this: I am of the science, and it's amazing how many scientists also believe in a supernatural personal God. So there's nothing incompatible about science and believing in God.
Well, this is where nuance comes in, because yes, like a lot of the scientists, like nearly a majority of the scientists in the past, like coming from the Enlightenment period up until today, a lot of them have been religious in some kind of way. And that doesn't prevent them from doing good scientific research in fields that are not concerned with God's existence or proving any specific religious claim. And even sometimes people that believe in God, they do a pretty good job of disproving certain religious claims, but it's usually for their own theological reasons, because they want to advance a certain position or something like that. But in any case, yeah, I don't think that anybody's precluded from doing science if you're religious, but I do think being religious would restrict you from certain scientific investigations. And these certain scientific investigations would have to be related to some kind of topic that specifically thinks that it has a say in. And I say that like psychology might be one of those things, sociology, anthropology, cosmology, astrophysics, things of those nature. I feel like religious people are at a bit of a disadvantage in some topics in those fields, because I don't think like if you're religious, you can't be a scientist in those particular fields. I think that there are certain areas of those fields in which you probably can't investigate to the fullest skeptical sense and be non-biased or as unbiased as possible. And I mean, I think that's just because of the nature of religion. But definitely, you can be of the science and be religious at the same time. But I do feel like, and this is where the nuance comes in, I do feel like the science is very caustic to religion, because the more you look into the scientific claims of specifically Christianity, which is what we're talking about in this video, when you take the time to actually scientifically investigate these claims, you'll find that at every single time the Bible overstates itself in explaining the evidence that we have, and the Bible is shown to be wrong on a number of these claims. I mean, the Bible's even wrong on history in a lot of sections. So the parts where you get like names correct and all that other stuff, sure. The Bible can correctly name, King David or Solomon or, any of these number of kings that definitely existed that we've been able to corroborate outside of the Bible. So we've been able to do that. And so they get a few things right, but on the whole, as far as like telling a historical narrative, the Bible just simply fails. And I don't think that anybody should use it as a source for historical information. Science is caustic to religion. If you go and you try to verify religious claims using science, you're going to be disappointed. But I don't think that precludes you from doing science in other areas. So it's a nuanced position here that you got to be kind of specific about.
It's actually the way we understand science that's the problem. There are many things we believe and we know to be true that don't come to us from science. We all believe that it's good to give to those who are less fortunate than us. We all believe that it's wrong for us to discriminate against marginalised people groups. We all believe it's wrong for a powerful person to commit violence upon a weaker person.
I'm sorry, but What fucking universe does he live in? Are we receiving this video from like an idealized universe where everybody knows this kind of shit? Because over here in the USA, like, that's not true. Not everybody knows those things. Like, he starts off strong, like, there are things that we know that don't come from science. And I'm like, oh, fuck, really? I'm interested to know what bits of information about our reality that we know and it isn't revealed through the scientific method. I would love to hear this because as far as I can tell, nearly everything that we know comes to us through some kind of use of the scientific method. And that's essentially what science is. So, I mean, I'm quite interested in this, but then he starts off with provably wrong things. Yeah, provably wrong because of the science. Because like the science of psychology, neurochemistry, all this other shit would prove that what he just said is wrong. Not everybody knows that those things are the ideal way to be. Like, he's got a very idealized idea of the human condition, because we have varying ideas of, for one, degrees of the topics that he listed, but also not everybody agrees that the topics that he listed are good, right? We all have this subjective moral foundation, and that's just proven through the science of like psychology, sociology, neurochemistry, I guess for that matter, chemistry in general. So, I mean, it's just, this is just not true.
We all know these things to be true, but how do we know them to be true? Science can't prove any of those things to us, and yet we know and believe them to be true.
You see, I disagree with this because I do believe that science could illuminate why those things would be ideal, but the reason why they're ideal is because of the kind of society that you want to build. If you want to build a society that protects the weakest among us from the strongest, then we can scientifically investigate like what is the best components of a society, the best rules, the best laws for us to implement in order to get us there, right? If you wanted to support minority groups, then there are definitely ways we can scientifically investigate, well, what's the best way to support minority groups and prevent targeting of minority groups. And the other things that he listed there are scientific ways in which we can evaluate the effects of whatever we're wanting to implement and see how it affects those groups. So he's just simply wrong that we can't use science in order to get to some kind of nearly unbiased conclusion about what is the best way to accomplish these things. And he's just like, oh, we just all innately know this stuff, right? This is just, it's like, sir, come to the United States. The holier than thou God people here disagree with everything that you just said. They don't believe in protecting minority groups. In fact, they directly want to target minority groups. They don't want to protect the weak people from the strong people. In fact, they're too busy sucking the stronger people's dick to worry about the weaker people. And this is proven throughout U.S. politics. The GOP right now would rather put children in harm's way than give up the right to own an assault rifle that's only meant to kill another motherfucker. And specifically, they want to make the number one killer of children nowadays, AR-15, they want to make that this nation's national gun, like a national bird or a national motto. The AR-15 is apparently going to be the national gun of America. And that's what, some Republicans want to do. It's like throwing shit in the face of parents who have lost children in mass shootings at schools and just people in general that have lost loved ones in those situations. So for him to say, oh, all people know this, that's just fucking bullshit that can be proven with the daily news cycle.
In other words, there's so much in this life that we believe and know to be true that don't come to us from science. It's the same with Jesus and faith and spirituality. They can be true even though they don't come to us from science.
Well, I'll say this. if those things don't comport with reality, then science would disagree with those things. Science would say, no, that's not possible. Like the resurrection, the way in which the resurrection is proposed in the New Testament, that's not scientific. That can't happen from a scientific worldview. So what Christians specifically, scientists that are Christians have to do is they do what's called compartmentalizing. They compartmentalize their analytical scientific brain and they separate that from their religious belief. And because they've done that, they can go about their lives and not have any kind of like cognitive dissonance or anything like that. And that's perfectly fine if they want to go about their lives in that fashion. I think they can live perfectly happy lives like that. Me, on the other hand, I got to a point where I couldn't compartmentalize that anymore. Like they were starting to bleed together and one had to win out. And because science is caustic to religious belief, science eroded my religious belief because I couldn't sit there and be like, oh yeah, totally. God whipped out his magic dick and created the universe. And then, everything else God did magically. Of course, magic. That's anti-scientific. I mean, I know I took some liberties with, the Christian creation story, but you get what I'm talking about.
You took liberties with a story?
I took liberties with the story? It's like I've never done that before.
For example, when I come home and my wife says, I love you, what do I do with that? Do I say to her, prove it? Give me a scientific, repeatable, observable experiment that proves that you love me.
I feel like he has this weird version of like scientifically minded people that don't believe in God. Because it's like, I come home and Casey's like, I love you, honey. I'm like, well, what the fuck am I supposed to do with that, huh? You love me? How about you prove it, bitch? Like, I know you do, honey. I'm about to get into that. I'm sorry. I'm just saying how it's like really ridiculous how he painted it. It's like, well, what am I supposed to do with that, hon? You love me? What does that even fucking mean?
I feel like you're being a good person.
Yes, you are being a good person, honey. Y'all should have seen her face. She was just so distraught over this idea of this scenario playing out. But like, you can obviously show somebody that you love them. A husband shows a wife that they love them. There's various ways you can do that. I mean, you don't have to believe in God to love another person or even to prove that one person loves another person. You could develop some kind of like scientific experiment to show that somebody loves and cares about another person, because those are like real effects in reality. This isn't some kind of magical shit that plays out. We can even explain what causes love in your brain. And what causes love are various chemicals in the brain that give you this feeling, this emotion of love towards another person. So, I mean, we can, like, all of this is very measurable and calculable. And so it fits very well within the scientific method, because you could use the scientific method in order to prove that this dude loves his wife. You can do that perfectly fine. So I don't know why he's acting like, the scientifically minded people come home and are just like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with you loving me and shit, huh? Develop a scientific method for you to prove to me that you love me? I mean, I feel like love does have to be proved. Like, you can't just say, I love you, and like that automatically means that you feel a certain way towards a person. I do feel like if you love somebody, then your actions are gonna illuminate that you in fact do love them. Like, you're not gonna tell somebody you love them and then slap them in the face. Well, I mean, abusive people do that, but obviously they have like a really fucked up idea of love, and that's how you can actually identify problems with somebody. And that's like a huge red flag that you just want to stay the fuck away from if they're not going to get help. So, I mean, there are definitely scientific ways of analyzing this entire situation. If I came home and Casey said that she loved me, and I was like, well, what the fuck am I supposed to do with that? I hope that would be like a red flag. At least not that she should leave me immediately, but just that it would be a red flag as to like, oh, well, this seems a little odd. Like this, I feel like this is one of those things where you just want to kind of stay the fuck away from. I would hope that anybody would want to stay away from somebody that treats being loved that way. I mean, I'm not saying that they're incapable of being helped, right? Like, I think that in that situation, you definitely help somebody, fix whatever is the issue, like psychologically within them that makes them have that reaction. But I mean, it's still a very troublesome thing, like what he's pointing out here.
See, that would be ridiculous, because love belongs in a different metaphysical category. So I believe she loves me. I know she loves me, but it's based on trust and testimony and personal experience.
Yeah, which are all things that would factor into a scientific analysis of whether or not she loves you. Like, he just literally said, there's no way to scientifically analyze this, but then here are some ways in which we can scientifically analyze this. Like, you're being contradictory here there, bud. The metaphysical thing, I don't know what the fuck he's talking about with that, but there are real world ways that we can unbiasedly determine whether or not one person loves another person. And that's, you know, the trust is built with like actions and conversations and all and things of that nature. So, I mean, like, all of these things are quantifiable and calculable, which are the main components of determining something scientifically. So I don't know what the fuck he's talking about.
And we know there is a Jesus who's alive and he's true.
There's a Jesus that's alive and true. So even if you believe in a historical Jesus, I'm just going to assume there was a historical Jesus for this. He was a first century Jew and you believe that he's alive. This is one of those, I get it, but resurrection's scientifically impossible, at least the way that the Bible portrays it. So, I mean, Jesus can't still be alive today. If you were to scientifically analyze this, this is an unreasonable position to have, in my opinion. People that see Jesus in the sky and on toast, well, that's a product of pareidolia. No, it's really Jesus. He can't like feed starving kids, but he can appear on toast.
I mean, I feel like if he could appear on toast, he should just make the starving kids toast.
Do you think if a toast comes up and it looks like a dick and balls, maybe Jesus teabagged the toast? I want to see a dick and balls toast. Dick and balls on toast. I'm not going to lose my channel. Jesus still being alive, that's not scientific. And I know that he says that he knows that's true, but my question is, how do you know something is true without like determining if it comports with reality, which is the main goal of scientific inquiry? Like, science in general is meant to illuminate what reality is. If that's a component of reality, that Jesus is alive and he's true, then you would think that science would be able to determine that. It would be, because if that comported with reality, then science would illuminate that. But the thing is that it doesn't. Like, science does not confirm this. So this is one of those cognitive dissonance positions, right? So he's rejected the notion that science can disprove Jesus, and he's compartmentalized his faith from his scientific, his more analytical part of his mind. And he he doesn't have any cognitive dissonance now because he's rejected the notion that science can't prove that. But only because he's like, oh, well, we know this not because of science, but because of how we feel about it.
Not because only of science, but because it's a metaphysical claim and it comes to us through other truth sources like trust and testimony and personal experience.
Trust, testimony, and personal experience. Well, the whole personal experience part, you know, he mentioned that before, but generally science is trying to weed out personal experiences because personal experiences can't be, it's not something that's repeatable. Like, it's very specific to one person, and that's you, personal experience. There's no way that we can prove that Jesus isn't alive, I guess. So therefore, it's a completely worthless claim if there's no way that we can falsify it. That's one of the benefits of scientific theories too, is that they're falsifiable. Like, if at any point we can figure out a better model for gravity, then we will falsify our current model and we'll replace it with a new one. And that's true for any scientific theory out there or hypothesis. But the way that he portrays Jesus here is we know this from other sources. The personal experiences are weeded out from scientific inquiry because if you just have this experience, then there's no way to tell if that experience is representative of reality or if it's your own subjective experience. But the other things that he listed there, I believe, can be analyzed by science. And he's just saying, oh, well, we know this a different way. Well, what way is that? I just feel like it's true. And that's never going to convince a skeptic.
And also to say, hey, there can't be a God because science explains everything is a bit like me going, hey, psst, I've worked out something. Bananas come from banana trees, so there can't be a God. And you'll be going, whoa, I don't get that at all. That is a category mistake. That is a logical non sequitur. Just because you know bananas come from banana trees doesn't mean there is no God.
Well, yeah, but just like because bananas are perfectly shaped for our hands, that doesn't mean that God exists. Looking at you, Ray Comfort. I do agree that just because whatever science says doesn't necessarily disprove a God, because currently there's no way to disprove a God. I feel like, I mean, obviously I can disprove a Christian God. Like that's can be disproven. But as far as the general concept of God, I feel like that's an unfalsifiable claim. It's a little bit worthless. Like we'll never be able to know, because we'll never be able to test whether or not a God exists. So you don't know if a God exists or not. But I do agree that the arguments that he laid out are silly, but I also have never heard an atheist make those arguments. Like we have specific arguments against God. Like even the harder atheists have specific arguments against like a God in general, saying that a God just simply can't exist or whatever. Like they have arguments for that are either philosophically or scientifically based. But as far as the Christian God goes, we can definitely prove through scientific inquiry that God doesn't exist. And how we can do that is basically how you can prove that the Christian God doesn't exist using science is by taking the Bible, taking the claims that are made within the Bible, and test them using the scientific method. And if everything in the Bible isn't exactly the way that reality presents itself, considering the claims of the Bible and the theological claims of their God, then it seems like that version of God just simply doesn't exist. And you can do this with every version of God that Christians come up with, and you can test their claims against reality. And if it doesn't comport with reality, then that God doesn't exist. Saying that a general idea of God can't be proven or disproven, while accurate, is just leaves you in the agnostic sort of mindset. The Christian claim is a very specific claim that we can easily refute through scientific inquiry.
You did that for a short.
I did do that for a short.
Well, that's exactly the same as saying, hey, I know the origins of the universe. I know the origins of life. Therefore, there is no God. No, that is a category mistake, because we can have multiple causations. That's what John Lennox says. We can have a supernatural personal agency and a physical causation story at the same time. And so John Lennox uses the example of a cake, a birthday cake that his aunt has baked him. And he says, what has caused his birthday cake? Well, at a scientific, physical level, it's eggs, flour, butter. But at a personal level, it's his aunt. And at a purpose relational level, it's because his aunt loves him.
Well, I don't think that just because you love somebody and you make a cake, that has anything to do with the cake being made. I mean, the problem with this whole analogy here is that it's a false analogy, fallacy. Basically, you can't compare a cake being made to the universe coming into existence. The universe coming into existence is a natural event that happened, billions of years ago, and it happened because of natural reasons. If you were to compare it to anything, you would need to compare it to some kind of natural process that happens on the earth. Like I typically like to appeal to the water cycle, or you could appeal to any other process that happens here on the face of the earth. The rock cycle is another cycle that is a natural cycle that happens regardless of whether there's an intelligent being there to cause any of it. And so that would be a better comparison, because you're comparing natural process to a natural process versus a natural process compared to a process that requires an intelligent being in order for that process to happen, like baking a cake. This is a shit argument because he's not properly comparing processes. The natural process of the water cycle doesn't need an intelligent being. The rock cycle doesn't need an intelligent being. The beginning of the universe, no need for an intelligent being in order for those processes to operate, whereas baking the cake does. So this is just a bullshit argument.
And it's the same with the origins of the universe and life. We can say, hey, I have a physical scientific explanation, but we also have a supernatural personal explanation, God, and we have a purpose relational explanation. God made this universe and he gave us life because he loves us.
That's bullshit. If God created this world and in this universe because he loves us, then why didn't he put us on a utopia type of? Why didn't he make something that wasn't designed to kill us? It kind of seems like the environment on the earth is geared towards killing life on the planet. Life in general is fragile, so fragile to where it can be snuffed out relatively easily. Why didn't he make it harder for us to die? Of course, his explanation for all this would be, oh, some bitch ate a fruit so long ago. But that just doesn't make logical sense to me. Like, that seems to be a violation of logic there. Like, how does that make sense that, some woman eating a fruit causes all of the human misery that we have now? Like, if God created this universe and all of the planets, including us, because he loves us, then that's some toxic fucking love. And I would love for you to demonstrate that he did it out of love, because it seems like he was doing it to be cruel if he did it at all.
So you see that God and science are complementary rather than competing.
They're not complementary. Like, these ideas are not, like, science isn't complementary to Christianity or religion. Like, that's just wrong. Because science is caustic to religion and religious ideas. And that's because primarily religious ideas they do not comport with reality. They don't represent reality. Science, its goal is to correctly describe reality the best that it can, and we're constantly refining our ideas to better represent reality. So if you have something that is contrary to reality, and then the other thing is looking to comport with reality, one is going to consume the other. And I think that a problem in history and a problem now is that people with fantastical ideas that don't comport with reality are trying to cover the science and the scientific method that are revealing reality. They're attacking it. And really how it should work is that the science should overcome the thing that doesn't represent reality. And I just simply don't think that religious ideas represent reality. This guy's just he's totally wrong on this subject. And that's just primarily because I feel like he's compartmentalized to the point where his religious faith is starting to overcome his more analytical side, if he truly does have an analytical side. So it's really weird to me to hear somebody do that, because it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, why would you want to forego reality for these magical, fantastical beliefs? I get that it makes you feel better, that it makes you feel good, but I feel like that can only hurt you, because if you feel good about a situation, but that situation in reality is hurting you, I would hope that you would want to stay away from that situation. But alas, we don't, a lot of people don't do that. Thank you, heathens, for joining me tonight. I really appreciate you guys watching. This video obviously didn't convince me that Christianity is science proof or whatever. Like, science can't refute Christianity. I feel like science definitely has the tools to refute Christianity. I feel like this guy just has this idea in his head that his religion is true because he feels like it's true, regardless of what the science says. And I don't think that that's any way to really go about like your worldview. Like, having a worldview where you take feeling over what the science says about a certain subject, I feel like is not prudent. So this guy's just totally wrong, and I wasn't convinced by it. I'd love to know if you were convinced by it, and if you will, please let me know in the comments down below or in the live chat right now. While you're down there, why don't you smash that like button and subscribe? So I guess I'll see you guys then. Don't forget to stand up, use your voice, and all that kind of good shit. We'll see you heathens later.